Welcome back to the No Regrets Blueprint podcast. Today, we're going to switch things up a little bit, and I'm starting a workshop series where I'm going to literally walk you through several of the core frameworks of a life of no regrets. Today, we're going to spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about the achievement trap that nobody sees coming, and yet so many of you are feeling on a day to day basis. I'm going to take you through what is called the hedonic treadmill and one of the biggest traps that we have as entrepreneurs with achievement. We're going to go through and break down step by step how it happens and what you can do when you see it. Now, if you stay to the very end, I'm going to literally walk you through a free downloadable PDF where you're going to be able to identify and expose the gaps between what you say you want and how you're truly showing up, and then how to close that gap through creating boundaries. Now, listen, if you're an entrepreneur who's tired of winning on paper and losing everywhere else, this is the place for you. So if you want more of this stuff, don't forget to hit subscribe. We're going to be doing something like this at least every week, if not more. That goes also along with some of the interviews that we have. All right, let's jump into this. And so most successful people that I've talked to, they're going to, when you ask them like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? They'll be like, great. And then when we go a little bit deeper and maybe, so I go to these retreats or I go to conventions and you get to sit with people for a minute. And what's interesting and fascinating is around the fire early on, everybody's like, they got their mask on, they got their armor on, they're looking and feeling good. And then you get a little deeper into the evening after dinner, sitting around, maybe there's only one or two of you sitting around and you start having some conversations. Underneath it all, you start to uncover that despite all of these wins, there's a lot of emptiness. There's a lot of regret. And that's where these conversations come in. Right. So maybe you feel like this, like you're doing everything right. You built a business, you've surpassed your goals, you're hitting the revenue goals, you live in the house that you dreamt of, you're driving the car of your dream, you're even on these vacations, you're eating what you want, going to all these places, and yet there's still that feeling that something's missing. I felt it. A lot of my clients have felt it, right? And so we decided to dig a little bit deeper. What happens is we're conditioned for the next thing, right? I know Sullivan and Hardy put together a really amazing book. It's called The Gap and the Gain. And they talk about this in the book that we're always moving the goalposts. First, 1 million revenue, 5 million revenue. Then we're setting ourselves up for an exit and then more and more. Like, when's enough? And what's the finish line? At the end of the day, right, the destination keeps moving and the arrival never comes. What happens is, yeah, you may have achieved some success and you're really good at your P&L at your business, but you're not really good at your P&L on your life. And there are sacrifices that we make along the way. Again, I'm not under the hallucination that in building times, there's gonna be counterbalance and there's gonna be some sacrifices that need to be made in order to get this thing going, but then you've gotta make a decision. At what point are you willing to kinda come back to the world that you set aside for a second, right? And maybe sacrifice that next level, that next achievement piece, because everything else is handled and taken care of. I've met so many people that are making plenty of money, and if they just dialed it back or created some boundaries and then got real purposeful with their family again, their income wouldn't shift. Their situation wouldn't change. And so I'm not talking about those that are struggling with 3, 4, 5 jobs just to put food on the table. That's a completely different conversation, and I empathize with that. And it's interesting, I get a lot of feedback whenever I talk about these things, to certain groups. If you're in that camp, this conversation isn't necessarily for you yet. This is once you've built momentum, once you've put together the systems, once you've got things going. So many entrepreneurs fail to dial it back. They just get stuck and they get caught in the trap. If you're one of those, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to those that are just barely putting it together and having to make sacrifices in order to make ends meet. This is, again, a different conversation. I empathize with you. And yet, if you're feeling that kind of way, I'm not talking to you yet, right? Because when things finally come together, you're going to get caught in the same thing. So if you're there, listen up. This is still for you. And yet, please understand, I've got empathy for your situation, right? So you may have gained the revenue and the recognition, but what'd you sacrifice? You may have grown the business. You've gained external status. You've got some awards. Maybe you're C-level now, or whatever that is. But what'd you sacrifice? That presence at home, maybe You've let your health go a little bit because the hours are long and you don't have the chance to meal prep or do whatever it is. Your marriage is on life support, struggling, right? Your identity, you've had to sacrifice who you are to continue to be the mouthpiece for the business. And so, I've caught myself in this, right? Having to play a role and not being able to put my authentic self out there. See, the problem isn't that you didn't work hard. The problem is you traded so much along the way without realizing it. And the achievement trap has three concepts that explain everything. Number one is there's an achievement addiction that happens, right? And then what happens with that achievement addiction is that we get caught in this dopamine loop. And that dopamine loop is what keeps us from actually being present at home and has us unconsciously and even actively looking for that next win, right? That next achievement. So, concept number one, achievement addiction. This is where, like, when we feel disconnected, we retreat to where we know how to win, the business. So what happens is, you're wired for all of these wins and successes at work. And then when you come home, it's not there. It's empty. It's quiet and it can get awkward. And sometimes the people that you say you're doing this for and the people that you want to spend time with, for whatever reason, it's uncomfortable. So what do? We jump right back into the email. We jump right back into the phone. We look for the next fire to put out. We look for the next win further down the line. And it creates this gap of discontent and disconnect at home. And the more we need to win at work, we mask that growing void inside of us. So the thing is, you're not building a business. You may actually just be running from something. The dopamine loop looks like this. And so oftentimes it's called the hedonic treadmill. And it's you set a goal, you pursue the goal. Pursuing the goal is super exciting, right? The harder it is, the more rewarding it is. And then when you hit the goal, and many of you have experienced this, once you've hit the goal, the dopamine drops because the excitement is actually in going after the goal. Over my shoulder, there's these medals, right? What's interesting is that the hard work along the way, that's the exciting part. Once you finish the race, there's a really well documented thing called the post race depression, right? The post goal drop. Yeah, it's a big thing. So what do? We set a bigger goal. We move the goalposts. We go further because our brain is wired to reward the pursuit, not the goal itself. Like when people say it's about the journey, not the destination, that's exactly what they're talking about. Biologically, we're wired for overcoming the struggle and the resistance. And that's why the day after feels like a letdown. In one of my earlier videos, I talk about when I finally achieved this goal in my mind that I had, and I spoke in front of our national convention in front of 300 other leaders around the company. I was so pumped to get asked and invited to go up there. And I just so vividly remember standing up on that stage and, like, as my time was coming to an end, going, dang it. Like this feeling inside, like, is this it? Is this what I put so many years towards for this moment? And like on the other side of it, I was like, what is this? It was a huge letdown. That was for me one of the biggest turning points, right? Because we're optimized for the wrong scoreboard. I spent years climbing other people's mountains to realize I was on the wrong mountain. And you only recognize that like once you break through the clouds at the top, because then you start seeing these other mountains where people seem to be having a lot more fun, and maybe their families are with them. Maybe they have a lot more people along them, right? So the third concept is we seek external validation over internal alignment. And this is where people talk about like the deep work or the hard work versus just getting after it. And as high performers, you may often have said, like, enough with the woo woo, enough with the sizzle, give me the steak. That behavior, that mindset is one of the reasons why you're here, is one of the reasons why you're probably still listening to this conversation. And you know what's coming next. You know that the other side of this is going to require you to slow down and sit in some shit and ask yourself some questions that you've been ignoring for a minute and get brutally honest with yourself. And for many of you, that is so uncomfortable, you probably just clicked off. And yet come back. I promise you that if you're courageous enough to sit in that silence for a second, the treasure that you're looking for is in the cave that you refuse to go into. So stick with me, right? Your identity is tied to output, not values, and success without purpose is just a faster treadmill. In the coaching that I do, when we do goal setting, there's so many people that want to like blast through this part and just say, like, I did this year. I want to do this year. And I go, okay, where did that come from? Tell me what's important about, like, I start digging deeper in that, and they don't have answers. And I said, well, we can't move forward until you have those answers, right? Until you get really clear on the purpose behind the goal, none of this is going to work and none of this is worth it. And I don't want to work with you until you do, right? It's super, super important because you can't fix what you won't acknowledge. So the concept that we're going to be teaching today is around something I call the awareness audit. There's three parts to it, right? There's going to be a time versus values assessment. It's going to ask you, do your calendars match your stated priorities? Some people talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. You guys are really good at posting memes and putting stuff online. And then if I asked your family, hey, are they in alignment with all the things I'm seeing online? You'd be surprised. The kids would be like, right? Then the second part's going to be a little bit uncomfortable for many of you, and it's the why interrogation. And that's where you're going to have to go beyond the surface level stuff. We're going to go deep through several different questions on what's really driving that biggest goal. And then at the bottom, I want you to get really clear what's at stake if nothing changes. And this is the part that no one calculates. Everyone calculates the ROI or the opportunity. Nobody calculates the opportunity cost if nothing changes and what's at stake if you continue down this trajectory. Because so many of you are losing so slowly, you convince yourself you're still winning until at some point you're like, I've been blindsided by the divorce papers. Why don't my kids ever want to talk to me? How come I can't fit anything? And like I'm out of breath when I tie my shoes, right? You're losing so slowly you think you're winning. We got to get really clear on the cost. So I've created a PDF around this, and we're going to go over that in a second. So the assignment today is you're going to download the PDF. It's going to be in the description down below. There's no gatekeep. There's no like sign up. There's no like name, email, or whatever. The link's literally in the description. The only thing I ask is if you got value out of this and you're still with us, go ahead and hit subscribe because we're going to be offering this stuff more and more and more over and over, right? Then I want you to find 20 minutes, uninterrupted time to go through this PDF completely. Take your time and give it what it deserves. Complete all three sections with radical honesty. Radical honesty. No, this isn't show and tell. We're not going to be sharing it with anybody. So if you're not willing to be really, really real with yourself, then I can't help you. Then there's nothing I can do for you. And then lastly, once you go through all three parts, just write down one boundary, one change that you're going to set today and move forward. And then I want you to just kind of check in with yourself this week and ask yourself, did I honor that boundary or did I allow something to creep? Did I allow something to come in and get in the way? And then just put it down there. And so don't have judgment around it. Don't think of it as loss, fail, binary ones or zeros. It's, hey, what crept in? And then ask yourself why? And then what did you trade in order to do that? Right? What did you have to give up in order for so just get really, really clear with yourself and be willing to ask yourself questions and then recommit and reset and continue to build those boundaries brick by brick. Okay. All right. So if you're finding value here and you want to go deeper and you want to see more and you want to be a part of the bigger conversation, you can always jump into the noregretsblueprint.com. This is where we put together everything in one package for you. But today I'm just going to give you this PDF, right? So let me pull up the PDF here real quick, and there we go. All right, here is the awareness audit tool. All right, you can't fix what you refuse to acknowledge. So part one is the time versus values check. I'm trying to see. I want to make sure nothing's. I got my window screen. It looks like. Sorry, a lot of my corners is blocking this. So the time versus values audit. So in the main areas of your life, business, career, education, focus time with spouse, partner, focus time with children, physical health and mental health. I almost want you to like block everything else on the paper and then just like ask yourself, scale of 1 out of 5, 5 being highest priority in your life. Where do these things fit for you? Where do these things fit for you? And just put down your priority. Then I want you to go into your calendar. And I want you to ask yourself, how many actual hours in the last 7 days did you spend in any one of these domains, right? And then so if you said this is a 5 priority for you, so for instance, focused time with children, that means asking questions, being engaged, no phones, no social, just hanging out with them. Ask yourself, if you keep saying your children are a high priority for you, maybe a 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, and yet you got 15 minutes or 30 minutes because we're asking focus time, not just you being around. And then ask yourself, okay, if I put 15 or 30 minutes down, is there a gap between what I say is important for me and how I show up? Yes or no? Yes or no? And so you're going to do that with all of those. And then ask yourself, what does that gap or that reflection claim versus what you're trying to optimize for right now? Then you're going to pick your biggest, most consuming goal right now, or maybe one of your biggest gaps, or whatever that is. Could be a revenue target, a launch, a new acquisition, a milestone, whatever that is. And then I want you to ask yourself, why do you want to achieve it? But you're going to go 5 deep. So the first is, why do I want this? And then just be honest. Here's the other thing. Don't just put 5 words or one sentence. I want you to take some time. I'm going to challenge you to get at least 3 to 5 sentences deep for each one of these. Go a little bit below beyond just the automatic answer that you have. 3 to 5 sentences. Take some time. Some of you, you've not actually thought about this deep ever. And it's going to be brutal. I don't care. Like, I don't care. This is like what you're experiencing in your life is a direct result of your unwillingness to go this deep. So go here, right? No one else is looking. Nobody else is, you're not going to share this with anybody. So don't be a little bitch. Like, get in there, get after it. And then why does that matter? And then why is that important to me? And why do I actually need that? And then lastly, if I achieve this, what feeling am I ultimately hoping it gives me? Go deep, be brutally honest. Don't be a little bitch. 3 to 5 sentences. There's your assignment there. And then last, you got to identify the cost. If nothing changes, if you continue down this trajectory, if you keep coming home a vapor of yourself and giving your family the rest of you, not the best of you, what's it going to cost? What's it going to cost your marriage? What's it going to cost your relationship with your kids? What is continually stopping at Quick Trip or Bucky's or whatever for whatever meal in between going to cost your physical and your mental health if nothing changes? These are really important questions. Once you start seeing all 3 of these things in front of you, it's going to create an awareness. And that's the purpose of this audit. That awareness is going to say, okay, something has to change. And it's going to come to you. And that something is going to give you a clue on what that boundary is that you need to set today. So start closing the gap between the success you're building and the life that you actually want to live. All right, listen, like I said, I'm going to be sharing with you some of this content like moving forward. And I trust that if you're here this far, stick with it. Don't forget, again, hit the subscribe, smash a like, share this. And then if this was valuable to you, there's somebody in your world that could use this. It would mean the world if you just shared it with them and just said, hey, I just watched this training video on this thing and it really resonated with me. And I thought maybe I'd pass it on to you and just kind of go from there. So again, this is Matt. I super appreciate you being here and stay tuned for more.